Let's see how we're doing, everybody. Hope we're good to go. Hope the live stream works correctly. Hope people show up in the chat. And most importantly, I hope you guys bring some questions because we need the questions. We need good information, good topics, and you guys bring the topics and the questions. So let's see if some fine folks start rolling in here. Where are we? All right, we got some fine folks rolling in. Very good. Angie, first place. McFly's Custom Design, second place. Cheryl, third place. Hit the thumbs up. Let's try to beat a record. The world record we've ever had for thumbs up is 850. The most amount of people we've ever had in here was 700. So let's see if we can knock out a record today. As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, eBay is rolling out the new policy update for the clothing category where they want us to grade it for pre-owned excellent, pre-owned good, pre-owned fair. However, a month ago, we had to sneakily get this information from the Australia eBay website that said on January 23rd, it would be rolling out for Australia and then February 4th worldwide. So they didn't say anything to us in America. We were just guessing. We were just wondering what is going on. And then a couple days ago, they have finally put it out on the United States of America site that they are actually rolling it out to us in the United States of America. They gave us about a 10-day warning, 10-day heads up. The fine folks in Australia got a little bit more of a warning. I wonder why eBay does that. Why does eBay kind of warn us so late? Does anyone know why? Why in the world do they warn us so late? If you guys have any questions in the chat, put 3 question marks and I'll knock out every single question that does come in. Happy to do so. But let me share the screen. Let's jump into the update. So about a month ago, we talked about this on the live, and we had to come up here to the eBay Australia site. And the eBay Australia site gave us the information, and it said for the Australia folks, on the 23rd of January 2025, they're going to replace the current pre-owned condition with, I don't know what this word is, with the new conditions. And then after that, it's going to roll out February 4th globally. So this is what we got on our top secret reconnaissance on the Australia site, and we talked about it back then about a month ago. There were some people in the comments who doubted, saying that it was going to roll out in the United States of America, but we're happy to report today that eBay.com in the good US of A is now saying that this is going to roll out for us as well. Set perfect pre-loved clothing conditions. Our new condition help options help you describe your pre-loved clothing listings like a pro. Learn how, why accurate conditions are crucial, build trust. Buyers can shop with confidence when they clearly understand an item's condition. Help increase visibility, optimize your listings to ensure they appear in the correct search results. Reduce returns, manage buyer expectations about an item's condition, and reduce the likelihood of returns. Discover new condition options. From February 4th, 2025, you can use our updated options to best describe your pre-loved clothing. So that's about a week from now. Pre-loved excellent, like new, previously worn, but with little to no signs of wear. Pre-owned good, gently used with light signs of wear and or visible flaws. Pre-owned fair, significantly visible flaws, heavy signs of wear, and or missing or damaged components. These are the new conditions instead of just the pre-owned blanket policy, which we have today. It will be broken down into these 3 whenever you do list an item for pre-owned. Pre-owned excellent, pre-owned good, pre-owned fair. These are the definitions. Reveal the details, flaws, and all. Include any item flaws in the description. Use the list of examples below for guidance. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Broken or missing fasteners. The item's fasteners, such as buttons or zippers, require replacement or repair. None, minor, moderate. And these are the condition titles in which it would fall into place. So what is the difference between minor and moderate? That is a little bit subjective, and it's going to leave a little bit room for opinion between you and maybe the buyer. Discoloration. The vibrancy of the item's original color has changed. None, minor, moderate. Visible wear. The item's fabric is pulling, pilling, thinning, or losing shape. None, minor, moderate. Holes or tears. The item has material holes, tears, or rips. Stains. The item has permanent staining, loose stitching, The item has irregular stitching, weak or split seams, dangling threads, or hanging hems, minor and moderate. This is my question for you folks. What is the definition? Everyone put their definition in the chat between minor and moderate. I also have a question for you. If one item has a broken button, minor amount of discoloration, a minor amount of visible wear such as pilling, a minor amount of holes, a minor stain, and some minor loose stitching, meaning that it has this flaw, this flaw, this flaw, this flaw, this flaw, and this flaw, but a minor amount of each and every single flaw here, does it still go in pre-owned good? Or does it move into the bottom or worse condition note that we do have? So if an item has a broken button, some minor discoloration, some minor pilling, one hole, a stain, and some hanging hems, does this item, just because it's, you know, a minor flaw of each, still go into the minor, or does that bring it into the bottom condition note? What says the chat? Perfect your pre-loved clothing listings. Accurate item conditions are just a start. A great listing also includes a click-worthy title, multiple high-quality photos, and the right price. We've got tips to help you become a pro. And you can learn more here. And look at that. The fine folks of eBay don't even have the right link. So let's see if we can get this figured out. A lot of stuff with eBay you got to figure out. And it ain't us. It's the link. The link is broken. So let's see if we can figure out the link. Let's go to the URL, see what the problem is. It looks like the URL is there multiple times. So let's see if we can separate this. Fine folks at eBay, let's see what we got. All right, we have pulled it up. A little bit of finagling goes a long way with eBay. You got to figure it out yourself a lot of times. So here it tells you how to build a quality listing, which is very good. We all know how to do this, or should know how to do this. We talk about this in the group all the time, every single day, 24 hours a day. So if you would like to learn a lot of this stuff, jump into the group. The link is on the bottom. Frequently asked questions. For which categories will the new condition options be available? Women's clothing, men's clothing, kids' clothing, unisex kids' clothing, baby and toddler, women's vintage clothing, men's vintage clothing, children's vintage clothing, specialty clothing, fancy dress and period, costume, wedding, and formal occasion, world and traditional clothing. Very good. Next. How do I revise my listings to select the new item conditions? You can revise your listings from selling activity in my eBay or active listings in Seller Hub. You can also revise your listings in bulk listing using one of our bulk listing tools. What happens if the item condition I've selected doesn't accurately describe my item? Selecting the correct item condition is your responsibility and crucial for your listing success. If the item condition is inaccurate, your listings may not appear in relevant search results, and you could experience increased returns or negative feedback from customers, which can impact your seller standards. So it is your responsibility and crucial. And if the item condition is inaccurate, the listing might not appear in the relevant search results. So what this is saying is eventually they will probably roll out a left-hand navigation option for the following. And if your item is listed as excellent, but is really fair, you're not going to get, you know, many sales because it's going to end up in the wrong category. What else do we got? What if a buyer wants to return an item because the item condition wasn't as expected? In this case, please work with your buyer to resolve the issue and avoid a case closed without seller resolution. Basically, they say, suck it up, buttercup, it's coming back, and make sure you resolve the case so you don't get a case closed without seller resolution. This is a very important one here. Will eBay protect me if a buyer wants to return an item because the item condition wasn't as expected? If a buyer requests a return because the item condition wasn't as expected, we will be offering some temporary protections for item not as described return requests. For a seller whose item not as described rates in our service metrics policies are more impacted by the change, we will offer temporary protections to appeal sellers in very high. Please continue to handle any returns, resolve any open claims to avoid a case closed without seller resolution. We will also provide free return labels for eligible item not as described return requests up until April 1st. Eligibility is dependent on the item not as described return having one of the new pre-owned conditions. So they are offering some protection here, especially if you end up reaching the very high inside of your service metrics. And they will also provide a free return labels for eligible. They don't define eligible item not as described return requests until March 31st, 2025. Eligibility is dependent on the item not as described return having one of the new pre-loved conditions. So it is confirmed. Now it is coming to us. And a lot of people said it wasn't going to come, but here it is. It's coming. It's going to be here by February 4th. And also, if we do go to, again, like spies and get some reconnaissance, if we go to the Australian website of eBay.com and you do a search, here right now, we are being spies. We are spying down under. This is ebay.com-au, and we just search for Nike shirt. So this is already set up with all the condition notes. They have the condition drop down right here, but the condition is still new with tags, new without tags, new with imperfections, pre-owned not specified. So this website is not yet updated to include the new conditions that eBay is rolling out. However, when you click on a listing, the listing is updated to pre-owned good. And I scrolled around here for a little bit, and I have not seen any listings that have pre-owned excellent. This one is new with tags, so that one is not eligible. Let's check this one here. This one is pre-owned good. So there is no left-hand navigation yet for the condition updates that has taken place. So this is one of two things, in my opinion, and I would bet my absolute bottom dollar that eventually this will get replaced with new with tags and then the new pre-owned conditions, such as new excellent, new good, new fair. I think if I had to place a bet, I think that they may be waiting for the United States to roll out with the update, and then they may change the website all in one. Because it kind of defeats the purpose for the buyer to have to click on the listing to see that the item is pre-owned good, pre-owned excellent, pre-owned fair. So they are either letting us, the sellers, get brought up to speed to make sure that we know what to do, or they are going to update the website once this new policy rolls out worldwide. And if I had to bet my absolute bottom dollar, my last dollar, I would bet that eventually it does move over into left-hand navigation, where left-hand navigation is going to show the condition notes such as pre-owned excellent, pre-owned fair, pre-owned good, whatever the definitions that they do have. But it does seem that there is a lot of opinion in between what minor and moderate means. And there's a lot of questions, especially on the first video that we did when we had to do our reconnaissance. What is going to be the definition? And I don't want this to get taken out of context, but like, for lack of a better term or a better word, again, I'm going to repeat this. I don't want it to get taken out of context, but for lack of a better word, a better term, I think each one of us as sellers is going to have to see, quote, how much we can get away with in terms of the condition notes. Now, I'm not saying that to say we need to be sneaky or we need to do something underhanded. That's not what I'm saying. For lack of a better term, and not to be taken out of context, we need to see what the market and what the buyer will allow in terms of the condition notes, in terms of our opinion, in terms of nuance between minor and moderate. So for lack of a better term, how much can we get away with? How much can we push the definition, the subjectivity of opinion of minor and moderate? And I think that, you know, it's not black and white. There is a lot of gray area, unfortunately. And again, for lack of a better term, how much can you get away with on the listing before the market has decided? Because the market will always dictate what is right and what is wrong. And if your items are not selling, then it's wrong. If your items are getting returned, then it's wrong. So how much of this gray area can you push on your listings between minor and moderate? Again, don't take the words out of context. Like I said, it's for lack of a better term. But we need to be able to find that line for each one of ourselves inside of this until eBay really does, make it more of a black and white definitive definition rather than leaving a bunch of gray areas. So let me catch up with the chat. If you guys have any questions at all, please, please, please put a couple question marks in front of it so that I do not miss the question, because I want to make sure that I knock out every single item, every single question that you guys have. As far as my hypothetical of if it has one of each one of those, some people say fair, some people says it moves into the trash. That is the problem, because per definition, technically speaking, it could still be in pre-owned good. Some people would move it into pre-owned fair, and some people would just throw it in the garbage. Kenny says, I think most flaws are going to make items that were somewhat eBayable no longer worth listing. And we had this conversation about a month ago when we first talked about this update, which now eBay has confirmed, which will roll out globally to the United States. It's now on the United States eBay website. If it does indeed move to left-hand navigation search, and left-hand navigation no longer is new without tags, pre-owned, and now it becomes new without tags, pre-owned excellent, pre-owned good, pre-owned fair, we have to really ask ourselves and have an honest conversation with ourselves and with our business. Are buyers going to log on to ebay.com and search for Nike shirt and then voluntarily look to see the absolute worst condition items that eBay and eBay sellers have to offer? Or will this category get drastically less traffic than the ones above? So like for me personally, I don't know if I would ever go into the lowest condition category when I'm searching on eBay for an item. So do you think buyers will still, or do buyers, that's the better question, do buyers buy based on price, or do buyers based on condition, or do buyers buy based on condition and price? What says the chat? Do buyers buy based on price? If they do, then they're going to do the search query and they're going to select the drop down and they're going to put lowest to high in regards of price. Do buyers buy on condition? If they do, they're going to use left-hand navigation once that becomes available, and they're going to select a condition that their preference matches. Do buyers, or will buyers, search condition and price? Will they go to left-hand navigation and then sort by price? What is your guys' opinion in the chat? What do you guys think? Juan says, attending for the incoming update, get us up to date. Absolutely. We talked about this about a month ago. We had to do some reconnaissance in Australia, but it has officially rolled out on the ebay.com website right now. Let me catch up with the chat. A lot of good questions. Get all the questions in, please. Dark says, do you think this will cause fewer total items being sold on eBay, because who is going to buy a fair or good rather than a great or excellent condition? And that's a good question. And, eBay doesn't do any kind of rollout like this without a humongous amount of, peer groups, studies, questionnaires, Q&As to customers. They don't do this by accident. They don't do this as a test. This has been highly, highly vetted, and this has been a decision where they feel that this will result in more sales. So in my opinion, from the buyer's perspective, it probably is pretty frustrating to go onto ebay.com, to click on 10 items, 9 of them have a flaw, until you find the one item that is in the condition that you desire if you are not interested in buying an item with a flaw. Using this, and if it does become available in left-hand navigation, the buyer can bypass those 9 items that had a flaw and then only look at items that do not contain flaws under the pre-owned excellent. Now put yourself in the shoes of a buyer. You go to ebay.com, every single time you search for an article of clothing, you have to weed through 10, 15, 20, maybe 25 items that contain a flaw before you get the opportunity to make a purchase. It's very frustrating. Maybe the eBay customer logs out, they go somewhere else. Maybe they go to Amazon, maybe they just go to Nike.com. Maybe they go wherever, because eBay tracks everything. They deposit cookies on your computer. They know why a buyer leaves, where a buyer goes. So obviously, they have seen buyers looking, perusing, browsing, and then for whatever reason, not converting in a sale. And perhaps, in their opinion, one of the main reasons why they are not converting into a sale, because there's too many items to weed through that weren't exactly what they were looking for. And according to their data, their research, their studies, they feel that making this change is going to result in more sales. Also, in addition to that, nothing more frustrating than receiving an item for a buyer than having to open up a return, send it back, and then wait for the refund. So I think that in eBay's eyes, eBay's perspective, they feel like this is going to result in more sales, and this is going to result in less returns. Two pain points from the buyer's perspective that will help kind of lower the barrier to entrance to a buyer actually successfully converting into a sale. NA says, so I just had an item returned because it was worn, unacceptable. She even complained about the smell. Okay, so it's all perception, but when she returned the item, my item was still in perfect condition. And you're going to get that. You're going to get that whenever you sell anything online first, and anything that you sell online that's pre-owned. Again, put yourself in the customer's perspective. They are buying something really, firsthand, sight unseen. All they could do is go buy a two-dimensional photograph on the computer, and the expectation may be different upon arrival. So that's to be expected. If the item returned and it was perfectly fine, list it back on eBay and then sell it again. It's sold once, it'll sell again. That's just part of the game. Mr. Guy says, let's be real, 99% of buyers pay zero attention to anything written in the listing, but even still, hopefully it reduces some returns. Yeah, and that is something as well. The last time I received any kind of data or communication from eBay about the percent of my buyers that were mobile versus computer, it had to be over 10 years ago. We're talking 2015. And back in 2015, which was a different time was 10 years ago. eBay sent an email to me that said 78% of my buyers were buying via mobile. That was 10 years ago. So the percent of buyers buying mobile has have to, increase dramatically since then. And we all know how listings look on mobile. The condition is not even there. The buyer has to make an extra click. Condition notes, there's issues with that when listing items from mobile. So maybe this will also help that the buyer can weed out automatically, before they even click onto an item, any kind of items that they do not want to see. And since they have a problem with the description, they have a problem with condition notes, they can use left-hand navigation, and they are willingly, accepting what they are going to purchase, what they are going to see based on a left-hand navigation search, rather than, having to read through, a bunch of legalese that a lot of eBay sellers have on there with a bunch of different colors, a bunch of, Adobe Flash with rainbows and, walking dogs across the screen. Like, we've all seen those listings that have a mile-long CVS receipt worth of legalese that don't purchase my item if this. I only accept returns if that. Like, buyers don't have time to read that. Make something short, concise, where a buyer can do their due diligence, make an informed decision if they want to purchase or not purchase this item. And maybe this left-hand navigation is the answer if eBay does roll it out that far, which I don't see why they wouldn't, because for a buyer to still have to click on a listing and see if it's good, fair, or excellent, it kind of defeats the purpose. Question, are any new eBay policy changes for other categories? Are they still in beta in other countries? For right now, this is kind of like the biggest, most major policy update that I have seen. And in the group, we always get, posts if someone receives an email or communication. I would imagine, down the road, very, very close, that this would roll out into other adjacent fashion categories such as shoes, maybe hats, so on and so forth. So if you're a shoe seller, this is probably coming in the pipeline. They're probably, giving it a good solid test run as far as clothing goes. But I can see this being rolled out into other categories as well. So no one is using pre-owned excellent. I currently use great and good, not sure how to move forward. So what you're going to have to do is audit and assess each one of your items that you're listing and each one of the items that you have listed in the past, because according to the eBay Australia communication that we read on here about a month ago, once the categories do change over, eBay has said that every single item is being moved into the pre-owned good category. They are putting every single item over in the pre-owned good category. So if you have something that's pre-owned excellent, once this goes into effect, it will be moved into pre-owned good. Every single item on eBay will be moved into pre-owned good. Now, the day that they do update the website where left-hand navigation is intact, the pre-owned excellent condition will have a drastically low amount of listings that will create kind of an unfair advantage for a little bit of a money grab, gold rush, in my opinion, because every single listing on eBay, 2 billion listings, millions and millions, hundreds of millions are on the clothing category. Each and every one of those will be in pre-owned good. If you can edit your listings and get them up to pre-owned excellent, when they do roll out left-hand navigation, there's only going to be a handful there, and your conversion rate and your click-through rate will go up. You will sell more items. You will make more money. When they did roll out item specifics, I don't know how long ago it was. It was probably about 8 years or so ago. I stayed up all night. I busted my butt. I edited every single one of my listings to comply with the item specifics. And I distinctly remember doing a search query, pressing blue on left-hand navigation, and there were like 6 listings there, and they were all mine. So for a short time, a couple days, couple weeks, I had an absolute gold rush. I was like a looter in a riot, because there were so many listings that were not in compliance because they didn't edit, and the competition was non-existent to those folks that did edit their listings quickly. So when the time does come where they do make that change to left-hand navigation, if you can edit your listings, there will be little to no competition in the excellent or the fair, because every single clothing listing on eBay is going to go by default in pre-owned good. What about desired thrashed items? That's a good question from KLM. Like a Carhartt jacket, does that now go into the lowest category if it is thrashed? And will your Carhartt customer, the customer that wants to look like they've swung a hammer but has never swung a hammer, will they know to buy, to purchase, to browse, to peruse in the lowest category? In my opinion, I think that the customer will know to search the lowest category if they are looking for a distressed or thrashed item. Because there are certain brands that if they do have flaws, it could increase the value. There are a lot of brands, if they have flaws, it will decrease the value. Like a Tommy Bahama button-up shirt with a flaw, the value is decreased. A 1986 Metallica Monsters of Rock single stitch shirt on a Screen Stars tag, if it has a flaw, maybe the value has increased. So I think that the buyer of those particular items will know where to search based on their specific preference and their specific needs. YOLO Flip says, what's the number one thing resellers need to be researching or spending time learning this year? I think product knowledge and execution is always going to be paramount. And when you intertwine that with constantly making relationships, I think that is, always going to be paramount, and the 3 keys to success. So knowledge, execution, try to make relationships. If you can focus on doing those three things, because photos and listing, the mechanical portion, once you get that down pat, like shaving 5 seconds off per listing is not going to make or break your eBay career. It's not going to dramatically change your life. But more knowledge, more opportunities, and forming more relationships can dramatically change the trajectory of your business. It's good to see you, Mr. YOLO Flips. Haven't seen you in a bit. So I-95 estates sounds like distressed items like Carhartt will be good buyer testing ground. Again, I think anything that is distressed or meant to be distressed, if I were to list them, I would put them in the lowest tier. So a distressed Carhartt jacket, I would put that in the lowest tier for me personally. Dark says pictures, price, and condition based on the photos. Yep. I think you'll be able to get away with more in comparison to other categories like video games and cards, where it gets murky is what you put with worn Carhartts and other desired worn items. Yeah, so I think that if it is like a factory made distressing, like on a pair of jeans, that factory made distressing is null and void, and you would just grade it based on how the item was originally manufactured. If it is a pair of jeans that has been distressed and was not made distressed, then that's when the grading per eBay guidelines and policies, that's when that does come into play. Let me catch up with the chat. The chat has jumped. Gage says they sold some men's skinny fit snow pants new with tags, and the buyer wanted a refund stating that they were women's. I don't think eBay would help me, so I just accept the return. So anytime that a buyer wants to return an item, like, eBay is not going to help. eBay is going to allow the return, and then it's up to you to facilitate and fulfill the return request. Make sure that you issue a refund and relist the item, and you live to see another day. Remember, we cannot have cases closed without seller resolution. That's what eBay has said in the FAQs several times. Buck Mountain says they finally caught the live. I appreciate it. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Let's try to beat a record today. How many thumbs up do we have? On my side, it only says 2. I hope you guys are giving way more thumbs up than just 2. The world record of thumbs up we've ever had is 850. There's going to be 3,000 or 4,000 people that come into this call while we're live for the hour, and we can't ever even beat 850. Like, I want to win everything. I want to get a W all the time. And we got to hit the thumbs up. We got to take down the 850 thumbs up like world record. It's been several months. Les says we have to continue to describe flaws in the description. I do get irritated now when people don't say anything about the condition. They just say pre-owned. Yeah, where they see like save photos. For me personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I've always kind of stated what the item is, stated the condition, and then stated how and when it would be shipped. I think like the one-word description is probably pretty frustrating to the buyer as well, and maybe not as good of a quality of listing as maybe we could do. Susan said they just buy items in great condition or don't buy. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit more. Lauren says, I don't think if someone is going to be that picky, don't buy pre-owned. I don't know how much clothing you've sold, but there's a lot of very picky buyers out there that do shop pre-owned, but that's within their right. That is, their prerogative. And if you do sell pre-owned clothing, then you have to deal with a picky pre-owned clothing buyer from time to time. And for me, I'm thankful for every single buyer, the picky ones and the not so picky ones. And it's my job, my duty to describe the item as perfectly as possible, to set the expectation when they do receive it, that everyone's on the same plan and it is exactly what they thought it was going to be. Vandy says they take all pictures of condition and flaws, so I never put it in the description. I think personally, like, we should take photos as if there is no description, and then write the description as if there is no photos. Vintage and anything retro are going to be so hard to sell. That's a good point there as well. So, like, do you guys think that the vintage buyer or the vintage customer is going to be smart or savvy enough to be able to navigate the website in order to find the items that they're looking for? It's very, very difficult to have a vintage shirt from the 80s or the 90s still in brand new, like new, perfect condition, which is what eBay is saying in the guidelines, like new. This weekend, we went to the flea market with my main man, Arwen. He was over here for 2 weeks. He's now gone home. And on Sunday or on Saturday, we ran into a vendor that asked me, hey, are you going to be here tomorrow morning? I said, absolutely. I said, what time do you want me here? They said an hour earlier than what we had originally planned. And all he said was, all right, come here at this time. I have some weird t-shirts. Now, what is your idea of a weird t-shirt? If a vendor tells you they have weird t-shirts, what do you think that is? Please, there's 400 people in the chat. If a vendor told you they have some weird t-shirts, what would you think that is? Would you wake up an hour earlier and drive 45 minutes to an hour just because a vendor told you they have some weird t-shirts? So I'll give everybody a second to type that in, and then I'll tell you the rest of the story. YOLO Flip says, how can we best serve the buyer's best interest in 2025? Increase conversion rate. Yeah, how we can best serve the buyers and best interest in 2025 is to pick up the best items that we can, make the most enticing and accurate listings that we can, make sure that we have enough knowledge about keywords that's going to attract the right customer that's looking for the item that we have, and then deliver on, you know, our promise that it is as described, and ship it on time and get it to them in the condition that they see online. I got in a little late, but will eBay clearly define what conditions qualify for each condition category, or is it up to the seller's discretion? I think a little bit of both. They have defined it. Is it clear? I think it's up for a little bit of interpretation. And I think it is up for a little bit of seller discretion. So now that everybody has written in there what they believe or what they think would qualify as a weird t-shirt, it could be anywhere from a Walmart shirt with Super Mario on it, all the way up to a vintage mosquito head shirt on a Hanes tag. So we took the chance. We woke up a little bit earlier. We went over there. I found the vendor. He said he couldn't find the bag. I circled back. He couldn't find it. Circled back. Couldn't find it. Circled back again, and he finally found it. When I ripped it open, it was a bunch of Walmart clothes. But inside of this bag of Walmart clothes was a stack of shirts about this high, neatly, perfectly folded. And inside of that stack of shirts that was this high, neatly, perfectly folded, inside a bag of socks and Walmart clothes and George and some Gloria Vanderbilt, there was 27 vintage concert shirts from the 80s from Prince, Madonna, Hall & Oates, Bruce Springsteen, George Michaels, a ton of stuff. And we only got it because we went by his word, and he said he had weird t-shirts, and I said, I'll be here when you be here. So, you know, they were a couple bucks each, and this is a vendor that I have a lot of experience with, and he told me the price, and even if I wanted to pay him more, he would not accept it. And when he told me the price, he said, you can have them for this price because we're family. And that really stuck Arwen when he said, you know, when he considered us family. And if I would have tried to give him $100 per shirt, he would have turned it down. He wanted me to have the shirts, and he wanted me to get a good deal, and he wanted me to go on and make some money. So, you know, even if each one is only worth $100, that's $2,700 in profit, just because we woke up a little bit earlier and took a chance on a vendor that told us on a whim that he has some weird t-shirts. So Kip says, at work and just able to ask you a question. When you drop down on condition, we all have the updated excellent flaw. It will be there. I think so too. Ready Steady Retro says, Vinted UK has fair, good, and excellent navigation for buyers. It's fantastic and quicker to shop. Fair condition stuff still sells if it's desirable and priced accordingly. Very good. Thank you for that feedback there. Susan said they had a return based on color of the stone on a sterling silver necklace, except the return relisted and sold for more after. That's it. That's the name of the game. It sold once, it will sell again. No worries. Ball Card says, I think fair will still sell. There are people still looking for a brand at a bargain. We will just have to competitive pricing. Good feedback there. I agree with that. I have a buyer that opened a return because defective, and they strategically made a stain on the inside of the shirt where it wasn't visible in the listing. So eBay does offer some protection that if a buyer does misuse returns or eBay policy, that they do allow you to withhold up to 50% if the item does have diminished value or maybe take some money to repair it. So you do have eBay protection in this instance. You need says, how are you? Good to see you. I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. How would you list a vintage denim jacket with light wash wear and small spot on lining? Otherwise, awesome jacket. Just an example with this new change. How would you do it? So that would be, light stain or light discoloration, minor. That would fall into pre-owned good according to the guidelines that eBay has. I also have another return for an item for defective. They are claiming I put glue and chewing gum in the pocket. Well, did you check the pocket? Because I found some strange things in the pocket of items that I have purchased. eBay should allow sellers to dispute item not as described returns after a new feature if the reason for it was already mentioned in the description. Customers should be penalized for not reading. So, Jay, thank you for the question. eBay does allow you to dispute, and we have a fantastic video, probably the best video on the entire internet, by Michelle on how exactly to dispute a false item not as described. You have to report the buyer. You have to state your case. You have to report to policy. And eBay has a crack staff of highly trained individuals that will manually look into each and every appeal that is submitted. And if they side with you, they will remove the false item not as described or the circumvention of eBay policy or breaking of any rules by the customer. D. Bush says eBay should have a distressed category. That's a good one. All right, chat jump. Let me catch up. Any tips for hitting up flea markets for the first time? Go there, get a lay of the land. It takes kind of a couple trips, a couple visits to kind of figure out who's who, who's overpriced, who has good deals, who you can talk to, who you can buy from. But just go there, put your knowledge and skills to the test. And it's kind of just like the first day of school. You just got to go there, do the best you can, go home, think about it, and see what you could do better next time. Talk to the vendors, ask them what are the best days, what is the best time to show up. Whenever I go somewhere out of town and I'm wondering what the best day is, what the best time is, I ask who appears to look like a seasoned vendor. If I'm not sure, I'll say, hey, how long you been coming out here? They say, I've been coming out here for 15 years. Okay, great. What's the best day to come? Wednesday is the best day. Okay, great. What's the best time to show up? People usually start showing up at 9. That's not what I said. Respectfully, what is the best time for me to show up so that way I can get the good stuff? Oh, probably come at 7. Very good. We'll see you at 7. By the way, while I have you, since you've been doing the flea market circuit for 15 years, is there any other flea markets or any sort of points of interest that you can point me towards so that way I can go hit other markets, other locations other than Wednesday when this place isn't popping so well? And they'll give you a laundry list of places to look out for. And again, you ask them what day to go, what time to show up. And the vendors will tell you they hold the keys to the kingdom. Fireball says eBay also needs a novelty option. Very good. King Bosch says, is top rated plus worth it? I mean, it depends. It's up to you. So in order to get top rated plus, you need to be top rated and you need to have 1 day handling time or sooner, which means 1 day or same day. That will give you increased placement inserts. That will give you a 10% final value discount on the fees. That will give you some kind of protection in regards of seller protection. And it does give you the ability to withhold up to 50% on returns or on buyers that misuse returns. Is it worth it? If you cannot uphold to the 1 day handling and you will have late shipments, then it is absolutely not worth it. Secret Stash says, what's up? What's up? So eBay is initiating this to slow the return process and buyer dissatisfaction. The only thing we could do is guess and kind of read the tea leaves and make our own opinion. If you want my opinion, the site must be frustrating for the customer. Maybe they come to eBay and they leave. The site must be frustrating to the customers who order something, it's not as expected, and they return it. So maybe this is a tactic or a ploy or a plan to decrease both of those barriers to customers purchasing the item. How would you rate distressed jeans, rips, tears, fraying, being that it is purposeful and part of the fashion look? I think if it is factory made like that, stock, I would disregard the holes, rips, stains, and tears, and I would grade it based on the condition. If it is not factory made distressed, I would then grade it based on the distressing that it does have. YOLO says keywords will be even more key on vintage. Always. Where are we? All right, weird to me equals good. They don't know what they have. Weird tails, naughty shirt, says Melanie. Weird equals strange graphics, not common. Thrifted says I would enjoy the surprise. I'd say rare equal weird. And Shafe says weird is relative. That's right, weird is relative. It could have been Walmart Super Mario shirts. Who knows? Starboy says weird means rare and or vintage. Circus or odd theme event, funky graphics, obscure graphics. The more unique, the better. Tie-dye, Gucci, rare or vintage. BKVT says, how are we going to remember the condition of every clothing item in our store if we mark it as excellent and buyer finds a tiny flaw? Will we get an item not as described? So in the communication that eBay has released for the American website, it does say that they are going to offer some protections. If your account is in jeopardy of going into the very high item not as described section of seller metrics, they will offer you some protection. They will also offer some protection in certain instances where they will handle and take care of the return label all the way up until April 1st. So they are offering you a little bit of protection. Where are we? If your sneakers don't pass eBay's authenticity program, is that a ding on your account? It is. You don't want to get too many of those. There's a lot of great websites out there. There's Check, which you can authenticate items, shoes. Now, just because Check says they're okay, that isn't the end all be all. eBay doesn't care about Check. It's just a little bit of peace of mind. So if you have any kind of questions at all about the authenticity of an item, whether it be a garment or shoes, definitely 1000% pay a couple bucks, get it authenticated before you list it on eBay, because too many fake items, too many zero policy violations, too many fails will result in some sort of account penalty. Jem says they had someone return a jacket to me. It looks like they cut it with a knife while opening the package. They did not as described. How do I handle? Also, how do you afford potential negative feedback? So the cut on an item, if they do cut it when they open up the package, always looks like this. It's always going to be like a right angle, half of a square. That's always from scissors. So like if you do have a cut like this on the item, that's from scissors. There's really not much you could do. You accept the return. You issue a less than 50% refund, and you chalk it up as part of doing business. How can you avoid any negative feedback? If the buyer does open up a return request, once you satisfy the return request with a refund, or the buyer does not send the item back once the return request closes, the negative feedback will disappear and fall off. Thrifted Spirit says they dispute and report every time. This is the only way to get bad customers to stop. Beats Life says, love the videos. Tips for moving more products quick. And do you do Amazon too? I personally do not do Amazon. However, we have a fantastic Amazon call in the group, led by Jack. Jack sells video games. He's done over $1 million by himself a few years in a row. He is an oracle, a wealth of knowledge for everything Amazon. We got Freddie in the chat. What's happening? Sean said, I had a buyer cancel a return and messaged me to do the return off eBay. I ignored the message, and a few days later, he gave me a bad review. Will eBay remove the review if I call? You can try. If you can provide proof that they did communicate to do anything off of eBay, that should give you some protection. King Boss said they found a $20 bill in one of the jeans. What's the most money y'all have ever found in a pocket of an article of clothing that you bought from the thrift store or from the flea market? How many storage units should I do before I get a warehouse? Whatever is more cost effective. If multiple storage units is more cost effective than a warehouse, then go that route. Who covers the return shipping costs? So it depends. If you have free returns or buyer paid returns, if it's a buyer's remorse return, such as change mine, didn't like, find a better price, no longer need. If you have free returns, you cover the return shipping. If you have buyer paid returns, buyer covers the return shipping. If it is item not as described, such as item not as described, arrived damaged, broken, missing parts or pieces, not as pictured, even if you have buyer paid returns or free returns, in every single instance of a item not as described return, you will provide and pay for the return shipping label. Freddie says, if you only sell sports fan stuff, you're exempt, correct? So as of right now, it does not mention the sports memorabilia categories in MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA, WNBA, so on and so forth. So as of right now, this is just going to impact the clothing categories that it states on the website. Is live selling the future, like all the content creators are claiming? I mean, you have to ask them. If they're making a bunch of money, then you got to ask them. But remember, the big number is the big number. If you are, savvy enough to back out cost of goods and back out, fees and shipping and all of this, it's very easy to tell what the profit is. So like a big number on a thumbnail makes a great thumbnail. A big number in the title makes a great title. But, we should be savvy enough to understand what items cost generally. And we should be savvy enough to understand what the fees are. We should be savvy enough to understand what the shipping is. And we should be savvy enough to back it out and do all the math and see what kind of profit is being produced. Because top line gross revenue means absolutely nothing. It is a vanity number. Profit is a sanity number. So if it works for folks, excellent. If it doesn't work for some folks, no problem either. You can build a beautiful, fantastic business around any platform, around any model. The only business you can't build a model around is low profit, low volume. That doesn't work. If you sell one item today for $4, that don't work. If you sell 1,000 items today for a $4 profit, that works tremendous. It takes a lot of work, but that works. So the only model that doesn't work is low volume, low profit. If you were us, what would your next steps be? Wait till February, or is there anything you could do now to update all the listing conditions? There's nothing you can do until the eBay listing flow listing format gets updated. I had a buyer of 4 parts not working, camcorder, file a return. It's clearly listed. That's part of the game. That happens. That's just the way it goes. Do you make time in your routine for the gym? So every single morning I host a morning call. I hit the treadmill. During the call, I hit the treadmill while I do all of my work. And I usually walk anywhere between 10 and 15 miles on the treadmill alone, and usually knock out at least 20 plus miles every single day altogether, according to my good friend, the Fitbit. Do you think eBay and Facebook dating each other is just the start of eBay becoming the engine that eventually drives Facebook Marketplace, bringing some sanity to Marketplace? I don't know if I would go that far. I think like if you read what actually really happens when they kind of merge the Marketplace and eBay and Facebook, is that Facebook was under some kind of penalty or prosecution in certain countries where I guess they were assessed some sort of monopoly or overreaching. And, they part of the punishment was opening up the marketplace a little bit. So it may not have been like out of Facebook's kindness and good graces. It may have been something a little bit more than that. How about you sell a new item and want to return your item saying it's not new? If the item comes back as pre-owned and not new anymore, again, you can withhold up to 50% if the value has been diminished. Once the questions are done, it's a wrap, and I will be 86 week in a row world champion, beat the chat world champion. So get your questions in, because once I beat the chat, we are out of here. It's over. Adios, amigos. I think the best thing to do is put a piece of cardboard in the package on top of items to prevent slices and cuts. At least that's how I would do it. That would absolutely defend against cuts, or at least dramatically reduce them. However, you got to factor in the cost and the time that it takes to do that and see if it's, bang for the buck, worth the while. What's your eBay site and what is your niche? So for 15 years, I sold clothing. I was the number one men's clothing seller in the entire world on eBay. I had 50,000 plus items, sold over 100,000 items per year, few $1,000,000 on eBay. Now I kind of just chill out. I list a couple hats just for fun. I make these videos for you fine folks, so that way maybe you guys can make a couple bucks and you guys can learn a couple things, and that makes me happy on this stage of the game. Are my messages not coming through? All good. I haven't seen any of your messages, my friend. Sometimes YouTube blocks them, so maybe try to ask again. A buyer's returning a camera to me because they no longer need it. They said they had the same camera and managed to fix it and no longer needed mine. I hope they didn't harvest parts. When I used to sell electronics, I did take some dedicated photographs of the screws. Some screws have paint on them to show like tamper or tamper proof or tamper resistant. So I did make a note to kind of take a photograph of the screws and any pertinent serial numbers or things of that nature. Where are we? How does one go about buying bulk from you? So right now, currently, all of the inventory is sold to pre-existing reoccurring buyers. I don't have anything extra for anybody else. It is an ultimate struggle 24 hours a day. I've made some good connections in the last 2 weeks, so hopefully I can start getting more stuff. I ended up making a great connection for like Patagonia and North Face for a really good price, $4 per pound, which kind of brings it down to like $2 or $3 per piece. So I got a good line on that and should be getting a couple thousand pieces per week indefinitely, and then hopefully branch off, move on into some other categories as well. So I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can, trust me. Might have missed earlier. What are your next travel plans? I don't know. Wherever my wife says we want to go, that's where we go. Where are we? I bought 30,000 books my first year working with bulk. Any advice? I would assess them and see what items are eBay or Amazon worthy, divide those out, list those, sell those, and then either figure out a way to monetize the duds where you break even at worst or turn a small profit at best, whether it's making your own lots, selling locally, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Let Go, garage sale, flea market. Try to monetize and get your money back, turn a small profit, break even at worst. If you had to do eBay to survive and were forced to not sell clothing but could sell anything else in the world, what would you sell? So a little known fact is I did have to do eBay to survive, and every single one of my bills from the moment I began selling on eBay all the way until today is bought and paid for. Like this beautiful house, this beautiful computer, this chair, this table, my telephone, my hat, my shirt, all of that was bought by eBay money. If I couldn't do clothing, I don't know. I would probably do maybe shoes. We made some really good connections in the last 2 weeks, so I can see that going pretty far. Or probably video games. New to sound, thanks so much for the help with garage sale season slow because of weather. What's the best place to source to keep costs down? You could try to bins. You can try maybe some indoor flea markets. You could try to thrift stores. You could try local, because people who have access to product, they're in the snow too, but they continue to get access to the product. So, if you are in a snow impacted area or weather impacted area, look, the people who get product all the time. So just because it's snowing, they still get stuff. So you want to be the one who they call on the phone and say, hey, I got this stuff. Are you buying? Are you interested? You say yes, you go over there. So you go to the binge, you go to the thrift, you try to make relationships, try to make connections, look for some indoor spots like an indoor flea market, so on and so forth. A buyer told me they watched a brand new item and realized it was a different size. The size they said it was never in my inventory. I told them to initiate a return. They left a negative feedback. So make sure that you message them back and say, hey, open up a return request. And then maybe try to call eBay and let them know that it wasn't even your item, or the item has been altered, and maybe they could be able to help you out. Did the question come through about Canadian sellers who sell mostly USA, upcoming 25% tariffs? No, that question has not come through. I'm not a politician. I mean, if that's the rules of the game, then unfortunately, you know, those sellers impacted by those rules of the game will have to absolutely roll with the punches. Who taught you how to do this, and do you buy low? What's the max? Who taught me how to do this is me. There was no YouTube when I first started. I started before there were iPhones. I lived in the solds. I lived by buy one, it's sold, buy it again. And what's the lowest? And do you buy low? What's the max? No, I look for the best item for the best price. I do not look for the best price, best item. There's a huge difference between that. When did you start doing eBay full time? Over 15 years ago at this point. Late to the show, to promote or not promote. It depends on the item. It depends on how much you can afford until you have a fundamental understanding of the market, saturation, and your profitability. You should not, under any circumstance, being promoted, because a lot of people are promoting themselves to very small margin or promoting themselves out of business. D. Bush said, thank you, thank you. What's the new update? Go back to the beginning. We read right through it. Basically, all eBay videos from every person are all motivational, no leads for the newbies. Nobody is ever going to do all the work and then tell you exactly who they buy from, who to contact. Here's the phone number. Go ahead, make all the profit. Nobody's going to do that. The closest it gets is me standing in front of the exact flea market that I go to, telling you the exact time that I show up, telling you the exact day that I show up, and showing you the exact vendors that I buy from. But nobody will ever come on here and say, hey, here is my best connection. Here's the phone number. Here's the address. Send them a letter. Nobody is ever going to do that. That's your job to do. Do you think handmade items do well on eBay? They could. They're very keyword dependent. There are other websites such as Etsy. Maybe you could utilize, social media as well for those too. I had a Virgin Island return when eBay said they could not create a label because of an international return. However, I shipped, it was considered domestic. eBay does get confused on the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John, St. Croix. They do get confused on Guam. They do get confused on the territories. It's just one of those wonky things on the eBay machine. You didn't do anything wrong. Is the most important part of reselling relationships? I believe it is. Once you get the mechanical portion down, like photos and listing, the most important part of reselling is absolutely the relationships. Jack says it wasn't a political question, just more of general. What should the focus be going forward? Better pricing for USA. You just got to do the best you can, because that kind of stuff is outside of your control, and it's going to put a lot of people out of business. But if you can kind of weather the storm and still, be persistent and still build a business, then, salute to you. But, there's always going to be increases. There's always going to be kind of these barriers. And, it's our job to continue to build a business, continue to be able to, make a profit and deliver items despite what goes on outside of our control. So like, I don't have the answer for increased tariffs. You just got to do the best you can and roll with the punches ultimately. Are there hundreds of flea markets all over Florida year round, or are sometimes better than the year? There are not hundreds of flea markets. I know you guys have this perception of such, but I literally have driven with Arwen over 2,000 kilometers, almost 2,000 miles in the last 2 weeks, hitting flea markets all throughout the state. Believe it or not, they are not one after another. They are 5 hours away, 3 hours away, 2 hours away. And they are seasonal. Like, you guys see flea markets right now. Come on down in August and go to the flea markets and tell me how great the flea markets are in August. Do you think flea markets are popping off in August when it's 110 degrees with 100% humidity? I have news for you. They are not. There's too much beef at the bins. How do you handle it? It can be tricky, can be tough. It can be brutal out there, but you just got to do the best you can. Some people clean out the bins, sift it, and throw it back. Maybe you go through the stuff after they throw it back. Maybe you got to get in there and throw bows as well. Can you do print on demand? In my house, we make listing. You could do that on Amazon. You can also do it on eBay. On eBay, it's probably a little bit tougher because it's very keyword centric, no brand. Can I sell low price stickers to sell high? You can try. There are people that sell stickers. Um, I bought a product from a seller and the product was incorrect. I submitted a return request. The seller declined it, and eBay said the return request was over. If you selected item not as described, that forces the return, and the buyer would not be able to decline the return. You must have chosen some sort of buyer's remorse return. Michelle said, do you review eBay stores in the group? Absolutely. People post their stores every single day in the group, and we jump in and tell them what they need to improve, what they need to bring up to speed, so that way they can sell their items and have better luck. So Michelle has asked the last question. I am 86 week in a row world champion, beat the chat champion on Wednesday night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. I hope you can now navigate the eBay seas a little bit more calmly. But thank you, everybody. Thank you always for tuning in. As always, be great. Thank you.